Hey there, Alex here. Since I still have both devices with me, I thought I would do a quick video about how they stack up against one another. I'll try to keep this video short since I reviewed both devices recently. So let's get started. When it comes to design, both are premium looking and well built, but I personally prefer the design of the Find X3 Pro because it's lighter and the camera bump looks better. I actually like the camera bump on the S21, but there's something about this wider camera bump that just doesn't look as nice to me. In terms of the display, while the Find X3 Pro is boasting features like the ability to display 10-bit content, I personally don't see a big difference in that regard. They both support higher refresh rates and Quad HD Plus resolution, and both look really good to me. For me, I prefer the screen on the S21 Ultra more because it's a bit brighter outdoors and it supports the S Pen, which is a feature that I like. However, I do think that the Find X3 Pro's optical fingerprint sensor works a little better overall, even though I'm not a fan of the lower position. The ultrasonic sensor on the S21 Ultra is better than its predecessor, but it's still not quite as good. In terms of performance, it's a battle between Exynos 2100 and Snapdragon 888, and personally, I think they are pretty close overall. I know there are differences when you run benchmarks on them, but in my day-to-day use, they both behave similarly to me. Both have the tendency to warm up quite easily, and both perform just as well in the games that I play. Even for battery life, even though the S21 Ultra has a larger battery, the Find X3 Pro's battery life is actually pretty similar for me. Maybe it's a sign that the Snapdragon processor is a bit more efficient, but it could be the software as well. But if I had to choose a winner, I'll probably go with the Find X3 Pro, just because it supports faster charging speeds. If you've seen my review of both devices, you probably know I prefer One UI over ColorOS. For me, they both have tons of useful features built in, but I think One UI just feels a bit more polished overall, and I like the design language more. Everything just looks a bit more cohesive and well thought out. On top of that, Samsung has promised longer software support for the device. Moving on to camera, which is probably going to be a bit subjective too. Both are really good to me, but I tend to prefer the S21 Ultra's camera because I like the style of image processing a bit more. I find the 10x telephoto camera to be more useful, and video quality is better. For me, the Find X3 Pro's HDR mode is often way too saturated for my taste, and I don't find the micro lens camera as useful, even though it is really fun to play with. However, maybe some folks will like that extra saturation or have actual use for the microscope mode. It also seems to be a bit faster at capturing images, so it has a higher hit rate when it comes to moving subjects. My guess is that it's doing a bit less stacking when it comes to image processing, because the dynamic range is often not as good. But you know, I can totally understand that for folks who have to capture moving subjects frequently, like parents or pet owners for example, this is probably better than blurry photos. Also, I find that this sort of works in the Find X3 Pro's favor when it comes to low light shots. Shots are a little darker but more natural looking, and there is less likelihood of blurry shots from camera shake. Also, the ultra-wide-angle camera is simply better on the Find X3 Pro since it's using the same sensor as the main camera, so if you love taking ultra-wide-angle shots, you'll love the Find X3 Pro. For the front camera, I think the S21 Ultra has better HDR processing and performs a bit better in low light, but in good lighting, I think that the colors are a little nicer on the Find X3 Pro. Other than the stuff I've talked about, both phones share a bunch of similarities like IP68 rating, lacking expandable storage, and no headphone jack. So not much to say about those things here, but I do want to mention that the stereo speakers on the S21 Ultra sounds better overall. It's a bit louder and fuller sounding. Overall, I know it's a bit of a cop-out, but I do think that both phones are good in their own ways. I'll probably lean towards the S21 Ultra a bit more because of the software experience and S Pen support, but I have a friend who switched from the S21 Ultra to the Find X3 Pro because of the faster camera. Both devices have their own pros and cons, and it's really just down to what features you care more about. Anyway, hopefully this video was helpful in some way for anyone considering between these two devices. Thanks for watching this video, and see you guys on the next one.